That morning, soft sunlight poured over Atlanta International Airport, filtering through the enormous glass windows and casting its glow onto the hurried crowd. The check-in counters were bustling, the sound of rolling suitcases blending with flight announcements, creating a chaotic symphony so characteristic of mornings at the airport. Amid the sea of people, Ava Bennett and Noah Bennett stood out not because of flashy appearances or luxurious luggage, but because of their confident, composed demeanor. 17-year-old Ava walked with the calm poise of someone accustomed to facing challenges. A simple white shirt hugged her slender frame, and her neatly braided hair at the nape of her neck only emphasized her resilient, mature aura. Noah, just 15, was full of life, a blue hoodie peeking out from under his oversized black backpack, his bright eyes sparkling with excitement. In their hands were two first-class tickets from Aurora Airlines, a gift from their father, Preston Bennett. In recognition of their outstanding academic achievements, Ava had graduated as valedictorian in the social sciences, while Noah had just won the state-level robotics championship. For the Bennett siblings, this flight was more than just a trip. It was a symbol of hard work, a quiet affirmation. We deserve the best. Ava glanced at the silver watch on her wrist and gave Noah a slight nod. "Let's go, we've got an hour before takeoff," she said in a calm, even voice. Noah shrugged, a mischievous grin blooming on his face. The two of them headed toward the first-class priority boarding area, where affluent passengers were sipping cappuccinos and scrolling through their phones, under the soft golden lights. As they boarded the aircraft, Noah's mouth nearly dropped open at the sight of such luxury. Gleaming white leather seats, an abundance of space so he could stretch his legs comfortably. Ava merely smiled quietly, calmly locating their assigned seats, to A and to B. They carefully stowed their luggage. Ava fastened Noah's seatbelt and tugged lightly at his collar to cover a small ink stain on his shirt, a remnant from yesterday's poster painting session. She chuckled. "Today's a special day. Try to stay clean, all right?" Noah stuck out his tongue playfully, his eyes still glued to the window where other planes were taking off like silver arrows. Everything seemed to be going smoothly until Cheryl Adams appeared, with firm steps and a navy blue uniform without a single wrinkle. Cheryl Adams exuded the confidence of someone who had spent nearly 30 years in the aviation industry, but her ice cold, scrutinizing cast a shadow over the first-class cabin every time she passed someone. Cheryl came to an abrupt stop when her gaze landed on Ava and Noah. A fleeting look of surprise flashed in her eyes. She quickly glanced at the tickets in their hands, then gave them a thorough once-over from head to toe, as if searching for some flaw. Ava immediately sensed the shift in atmosphere. She pretended to focus on the book in her hands, hoping the moment would pass. But Cheryl's sharp heels clicked straight toward seat 2A. A loud, deliberate throat-clearing sound broke the quiet, drawing the attention of several nearby passengers. "Are you sure you're sitting in the right seats?" Cheryl's voice rang out, cold and high-pitched, laced with undisguised suspicion. Ava looked up, maintaining her composure, and calmly presented the tickets. "Yes, ma'am. Seats 2A and 2B. These are our tickets." Cheryl pinched the tickets between two fingers, as if afraid they might dirty her, quickly scanning them before frowning. She flipped them back and forth, clearly trying to find some mistake, but there was none. The tickets were genuine, clear, and valid. Noah, sensing the tension, whispered, "What's going on, Ava?" Ava squeezed Noah's hand lightly under the seat. "Stay calm. Let me handle it." But Cheryl did not relent. She stood there, lips pressed into a thin line, eyes sharp as a blade. After several suffocating seconds of silence, she finally spoke, her voice loud enough for a few other passengers to hear. "First class isn't really meant for underage passengers or those who aren't appropriate." A dagger to their pride. Ava straightened, her deep brown eyes burning with determination. "We have valid tickets, and our father booked these seats for us," Cheryl sneered, an unpleasant smirk tugging at the corner of her lips. She didn't bother arguing further. With a sharp turn on her heel, she headed toward the cockpit. Muttering something under her breath that was impossible to catch, Ava sat back down, her heart pounding. She knew that she had just been targeted not because of their age, or even their attire but for something deeper, the color of their skin. Noah bowed his head low, clutching his seatbelt tightly. For the first time in his life, he truly felt what discrimination meant. It was cold, cruel, and it could snatch away joy in the blink of an eye. Inside Ava, an unspoken promise resonated. We won't let anyone steal our pride. She pulled out her phone and sent a short text to their father. Dad, something's not right on this flight. Somewhere thousands of miles away. Preston Bennett, a man who had fought his way up from nothing to build Aurora Airlines, received that message, and a silent storm began to form, preparing to sweep away anyone who dared to lay a hand on his family. On the 52nd floor of a glass skyscraper in downtown Los Angeles, the setting sun was flooding Preston Bennett's office. Behind him, the golden sky was gradually turning purple, reflecting off the glass walls and creating a breathtakingly magnificent scene. Preston, in a perfectly tailored gray suit, was seated in the large conference room, listening to a discussion about expanding flight routes to Asia. He nodded lightly as an assistant presented information, his eyes occasionally glancing at the phone placed face down beside his black coffee. It wasn't until the phone vibrated a light but urgent buzz that he shifted. Preston glanced down. A message appeared. Dad, something's not right on the flight. His heart tightened. Without hesitation, Preston picked up the phone and, with a brief, polite nod, excused himself from the meeting. He strode down the hallway, each step heavy as if weighed down by lead. Calling directly to Aurora Airlines Operations Center, Preston issued a cold, commanding order. Patch me through to the captain of Flight 719 immediately. This is urgent. Just seconds later, the line connected. The captain's voice came through, tinged with slight surprise. We're preparing to close the aircraft doors, Mr. Bennett. Preston gripped the phone tightly. His words shot out like irrefutable commands. Put the lead flight attendant, Cheryl Adams, on the line. Now. There was a short pause. Then the sound of footsteps echoed faintly over the line. Cheryl answered, her tone steady. This is Cheryl Adams, lead flight attendant. Preston leaned against the cold glass wall, his voice dropping low, rumbling like distant thunder. You just humiliated two children sitting in seats to A and to B, didn't you? On the other end, Cheryl hesitated, but quickly regained her voice, a hint of arrogance creeping in. Sir, I was merely following security procedures. The two passengers did not meet our first-class standards. A wave of contemptuous laughter rose within Preston, but he didn't let it out. He simply responded, each word striking like a hammer. Whose standards? Or just the standards inside your prejudiced mind? Silence. Preston gave her no room to respond. You are speaking to Preston Bennett, founder and president of Aurora Airlines, and the father of the two children you just insulted. Cheryl gasped audibly. Preston could almost see the panic seeping into her every pore. Right now, he growled. You will return to seats to A and to B. You will apologize to Ava and Noah Bennett loudly, clearly, so that the entire first-class cabin can hear you. You will personally escort them back to their seats. He paused, letting each word carve itself deep into Cheryl's mind. If you don't, Preston's voice dropped to a steely whisper. That Aurora Airlines uniform you're wearing will be the last you ever wear in this industry. Aboard the flight, Cheryl stood frozen in front of the cockpit door. Her face had gone pale. Her hands gripped the intercom so tightly that her knuckles turned white. She knew, one mistake, one refusal and her 30-year career would end instantly. Suppressing her seething anger, Cheryl took a deep breath, then turned heavily back toward the passenger cabin. The atmosphere seemed to freeze as passengers saw her approaching Ava and Noah, the same children she had humiliated just moments ago. Stopping before them, Cheryl cleared her throat, the sound dry and unnatural. Miss Bennett. Master Bennett, she said, trying to keep her voice even, but unable to mask the stiffness. I apologize for the earlier misunderstanding. Your tickets are fully valid. Please return to seats to A and to B." A wave of murmurs rippled through the cabin. Ava narrowed her eyes slightly, reading every taut line on Cheryl's strained face. But she only gave a polite nod, taking Noah's hand to stand up. Noah caught the barrage of glances thrown their way, some pitying, some awkward, some mocking. He squeezed his sister's hand tightly, lifted his chin, and walked through the crowded economy section, step by step, back to their rightful first-class seats. As Ava sat down, she smoothed her shirt, fastened her seatbelt, and reopened her book as if nothing had happened. But inside her, a fire had been lit. A fire not just from personal humiliation, but from something much bigger, the injustice that still simmered beneath the surface, even in the most glamorous, civilized places. Back on the 52nd floor, Preston Bennett exhaled deeply, placing the phone gently on the table. He stepped out onto the balcony, resting his hands on the glass railing, his eyes gazing far out toward the blood-red horizon. He knew this incident wouldn't be resolved with just an apology, because once prejudice had taken root in people's hearts, it wouldn't simply vanish with a reminder. Preston clenched his fists. The wind howled through the skyscrapers, sweeping away the last rays of the dying sun. In his heart, he had made a decision. If they thought they could humiliate the Bennett children without consequence, they were about to experience a nightmare. Flight 719 of Aurora Airlines sliced through dense layers of cloud, leaving behind a thin trail of light across the night sky. Inside the first-class cabin, the atmosphere had calmed, the whispered conversations gradually fading. But for Ava and Noah Bennett, that peace was merely a thin veneer covering a deep, lingering unease. Noah quietly twisted a plastic cup in his hands, his eyes fixed on the darkness outside the window. Moonlight flickered across the glass, reflecting the boy's face, still young but full of determination. Ava glanced at her younger brother, a slow ache of sympathy rising in her chest. She knew Noah was trying to mask his hurt behind a silent exterior. Like her, he wasn't used to being the target of judgmental stare, especially for one reason alone: the color of their skin. "Ava," Noah whispered, his voice hoarse, "why do you think they did that?" Ava set her book down and gently squeezed his hand. "Because they're afraid," she answered, her gaze distant. "Afraid of what they don't understand. And sometimes, people hide that fear with contempt." Noah lifted his head, his eyes burning with confusion and anger. "But we didn't do anything wrong." Ava offered a sad smile. "No, little brother, we didn't do anything wrong. And we're not going to let anyone make us believe otherwise." In the cockpit, Captain Mitchell stole a quick glance at the radar screen before turning toward Cheryl. Adamswell had just returned from her fateful phone call. He didn't say anything, but the tension lingering on her face was obvious. A repressed fear, a simmering resentment. Mitchell sighed quietly to himself. Years in the aviation industry had taught him this truth. Sometimes the greatest threats to aviation weren't bad weather or technical malfunctions, but the prejudices humans carried with them into the skies. An hour later, Flight 719 landed safely at Los Angeles International Airport. As the plane's wheels touched the ground, Ava and Noah exchanged a look of steely resolve. What had happened today would not end here. She could feel it deep within her skin. Like a storm quietly gathering on the horizon, passengers began to rise, retrieving their luggage. Ava and Noah prepared slowly, unhurried, heads held high. They exited the aircraft upright and proud, silently vowing that this humiliation would not simply fade as if it had never happened. However, as they entered the baggage claim area, Ava immediately sensed something off in the air. A group of 3 security officers, dressed in black uniforms, stood blocking the exit path, their expressions cold and stern. One of them, a large man with a radio clipped to his shoulder, gestured to them. "Please step aside for additional luggage inspection. There's a concern regarding prohibited items." Ava frowned. Her instinct screamed that something wasn't right. Noah whispered in panic, "Ava, what's happening? We didn't bring anything weird." Ava placed a steadying hand on his shoulder, forcing herself to stay calm. It's all right. Just follow along. We have nothing to hide. Under the harsh, blinding white lights, their two black backpacks were methodically searched in full view of hundreds of curious onlookers. Anthena a heavy sigh escaped when a security officer pulled out a small bag containing suspicious white powder from Noah's backpack. The air immediately grew thick with tension. Someone blurted out, "Drugs," whispers ignited like wildfire. Noah froze, his eyes wide with terror. "No, I don't know what that is." Ava immediately stepped in front of him, her voice sharp and unwavering. "That's not ours. This is a setup." But her words, among the judging glances and the smug smirk of the head of security, felt like a helpless echo in a sealed room. "Please come with us," the head officer said coldly, signaling for handcuffs. Noah struggled, his eyes brimming with tears. Ava grabbed his hand tightly, fury boiling inside her, but her voice remained as steady as possible. "We demand an immediate field test. We have the right to prove our innocence." The head officer frowned slightly, seeming to hesitate, but facing Ava's unyielding stare and the growing attention of the surrounding crowd, he grudgingly nodded. A rapid drug testing kit was brought out. Every passing minute was suffocating. Ava squeezed Noah's hand and whispered, "Trust me, we did nothing wrong." The machine beeped, the result flashing clearly, negative for narcotics. The atmosphere erupted relief sighs, buzzing conversations. The head of security's face flushed bright red as he stammered, "There must have been some mistake. Apologies for the inconvenience." Ava didn't respond. She simply gripped Noah's hand and led him away from the still murmuring crowd. But in her eyes, a sharp, cold light flickered. This wasn't a mistake. It was a deliberate attack, and she swore, by all the honor of the Bennett family, that she would find out who was behind it. As Ava and Noah Bennett left the baggage claim area, their footsteps echoed down the long, cavernous hallway of Los Angeles Airport, heavy as the atmosphere weighing around them. Ava tightened her grip on her younger brother's hand, feeling the slight trembling beneath his thin hoodie. Noah, who usually chattered endlessly with questions, was now unnervingly silent. In his eyes, the innocence had cracked, leaving a quiet fracture that made Ava's heart ache. She couldn't let this pass like a fleeting nightmare. No, she couldn't. The phone in Ava's pocket buzzed. Preston Bennett's name flashed on the screen. She quickly answered. Her father's voice came through, deep and decisive. "I know everything. Do not leave the airport." "I'm on my way." Ava nodded instinctively, as if Preston could see her. "Yes, father." Ending the call, she gripped her backpack strap tighter, her gaze sharpening. She had learned from that indomitable man that when pushed against the wall, the strong do not retreat, they stand, and they fight back. Just 15 minutes later, amid the bustling sea of travelers at the international terminal, a sleek black SUV pulled up before the VIP entrance. From the car, Preston Bennett stepped out, each stride tearing through the thick air like a blade. He wore a deep blue suit, tie slightly loosened, but there was no mistaking the authority he exuded. His dark eyes scanned the crowd until they landed on Ava and Noah. Without a word, he crossed the space and enveloped his children in a firm embrace. Noah, usually reserved, clung to his father so tightly that his knuckles turned white. Ava buried her head against Preston's shoulder, allowing herself, for the first time that day, to exhale a heavy, burdened breath. Preston released them, his gaze flashing cold. "Let's go. We have work to do." The SUV sped away from the airport, racing down the bright-lit streets of Los Angeles. Inside the car, Preston remained silent, his eyes brooding as they stared out the window. Ava sat beside him, her fingers dancing over a laptop. She was accessing Aurora Airlines' internal systems where personnel records, flight schedules, and security reports were stored. With programming skills self-taught through countless late nights, Ava could sift through the data most would overlook. In just a few minutes, she looked up, her eyes glinting with sharp focus. "Dad, I found something." She turned the laptop screen toward Preston, A copy of an internal security report, personally submitted by Cheryl Adams to airport control before the plane had landed. The content was sparse, just a few lines. Note: passengers to A, and to be subject to additional luggage inspection. Suspicious behavior. No evidence, no detailed description, just a vague, baseless note. It had triggered a harsh inspection process. Noah gasped, his voice choked with fury. She tried to set us up. Preston's hand gripped the car's armrest tightly, the tendons standing out stark against his sun-browned skin. In the eyes of the man who had built an aviation empire from nothing, there was now only one thing left: the determination to destroy whoever had dared to attack his family. The SUV veered onto the highway, leading to Aurora Airlines headquarters, a skyscraper gleaming silver blue at the heart of the city. Night had cloaked the sky, but Aurora's offices remained lit, buzzing like a battlefield that never slept. As Preston, Ava, and Noah entered the grand lobby, every eye turned toward them. The receptionist shot to her feet, her voice trembling. "Mr. Bennett, the executive board is waiting for you in the conference room on the 48th floor." Preston gave a slight nod, needing no further words. He strode toward the private elevator, his children following closely behind. Inside Ava, an unfamiliar feeling stirred. She was no longer just a girl trailing behind her father. She could feel it, more vividly than ever. She was standing on a real battlefield, between justice and deceit, between honor and the shame others tried to impose, and she was ready. The 48th floor. The elevator doors slid open with a sharp ding. Inside the conference room, the board members of Aurora Airlines were already waiting. Their facemen and women who held the fate of Aurora in their hands showed clear tension. At the end of the table sat Gregory Shockfoe of Aurora with his arms crossed, wearing an unsettlingly calm expression. Ava narrowed her eyes. Her sharp instincts told her this man was not innocent. Preston advanced, his gaze steely. He stopped at the head of the table, opened Ava's laptop, and projected Cheryl Adams' security report onto the large screen. The soft rustling of papers filled the otherwise silent room. "This," Preston's voice rumbled, each word enunciated with crisp clarity, "is how one of our veteran employees plotted to frame my children and tarnish the reputation of Aurora Airlines." A board member frowned, cautiously raising a point. "Mr. Bennett, we don't have definitive proof that Cheryl acted alone." Preston gave a cold, humorless smile. "Exactly. Because she didn't act alone." He tapped another key on the laptop. The conference room's large screen shifted to a chain of encrypted emails that Ava had successfully decrypted, revealing secret communications between Cheryl Adams and Gregory Shaw. A wave of murmurs swept through the room. Ava shot a glance at Gregory. The man remained seated, but his hand twitched slightly, and his eyes darkened ominously. Noah leaned over and whispered, his blood boiling, "We found the right one." The conference room on the 48th floor seemed to be holding its breath. On the large screen, the decrypted emails from Aurora Airlines' internal system continued to scroll slowly. The cold content laid bare an undeniable truth. Gregory Shaw, chief financial officer, a man Preston had once trusted, had secretly communicated with and directed Cheryl Adams to set up Ava and Noah. The atmosphere thickened, as if every breath carried the weight of 1,000 pounds. Preston Bennett stood tall, both hands braced firmly against the long table, his gaze sweeping across the room like two cold blades. "Have you all seen enough?" His voice was steady and deep, but it crashed through the room like a thunderclap. Across from him, Gregory Shaw sat frozen. Yet under the harsh white lights, beads of sweat trickled down his temples, betraying the false calm he tried to maintain. Eleanor Pierce, the longest-serving member of the board, spoke sternly. "Mr. Shaw, do you have anything to say in response to this evidence?" Gregory cleared his throat, adjusting his tie, then slowly stood up. His face tried to remain composed, but the turmoil in his eyes was unmistakable. "This is a misunderstanding," he began, his voice cracking slightly. "Those emails could have been fabricated. It's the internet. Everyone knows how easy it is to fake things nowadays. A cold, cutting laugh broke from Preston. Fabricated, Preston stressed each word. Then you won't mind having an independent cybersecurity team verify their authenticity, will you? Gregory stiffened. 1 beat, 2 beats. He knew that once an investigation was launched, the truth would be laid bare before the entire board. There would be no place left to hide. He snapped, his voice defensive and harsh. We're wasting time. Those kids, they're damaging the company's reputation. I was just trying to protect Aurora. Ava gripped the armrest of her chair tightly. Her ice clear, yet razor-sharp, locked onto Gregory without blinking. You weren't protecting anyone, she said quietly, yet her voice echoed through the room. You attacked us because you thought wetwo kids of color wouldn't be able to defend ourselves. A few board members leaned back in their chairs, their eyes betraying discomfort. Ava's words weren't just a blow to Gregory. They exposed a painful truth festering within the company itself. Feeling the noose tightening around him, Gregory growled, You'll regret this. Preston, you've gotten soft. You pamper those kids, and now you're dragging the whole company into ruin. Preston simply looked at him. It wasn't a look of anger but the detached gaze of a man, witnessing the slow collapse of a creature cornered and thrashing in its final moments. He tilted his head slightly, signaling the security team. The conference room doors swung open, and 2 security officers in black uniforms stepped inside. Gregory Shaw, Preston announced, his voice resounding against the walls. You are hereby suspended pending criminal investigation for conspiracy, corruption, and gross violation of business ethics. A gasp of shock rippled through the room. Gregory staggered backward, but the 2 guards moved in, swiftly securing him. He twisted around, fire blazing in his eyes as he glared at Preston, Ava, and Noah. This isn't over, he hissed as he was dragged out, the sound of his shoes scraping across the cold marble floor, echoing long after he disappeared through the door. Preston remained standing, watching until Gregory's figure vanished. Only then did he turn to face the board, his gaze carrying the weight of an unspoken command. We will clean Aurora Airlines. Starting today. No one objected. As Preston, Ava, and Noah exited the conference room, the long hallway bathed in soft golden lights seemed to lay a path before them. Noah looked up at his father, his eyes still red but now glinting with a strange, fierce light, a light of pride, an unwavering belief. Dad, Noah stammered, you didn't just protect us. You taught us how to stand. Preston paused, placing a steady hand on his son's shoulder. No one can take away your dignity, he said quietly, unless you give it away yourself. Ava stood beside them, still clutching the laptop, evidence of justice. In her eyes, the softness of childhood was fading, replaced by the resolve of a fighter. Outside, Los Angeles shimmered under its night lights, the streets intertwined like rivers of fate, flowing and converging. The Bennett family stepped into that cityscape, 3 figures, 3 spirits bound into one unshakable force. But elsewhere, in the unseen corners where light had yet to reach, a new conspiracy was already beginning to take form. A new enemy, more sinister, more ruthless, had started to calculate its next move. And this time, the battle would not be confined to an airport, a single plane, or even one airline. It would explode across an entire battlefield where courage, loyalty, and faith would be tested to their very limits. Outside the Aurora Airlines headquarters, the night stretched over Los Angeles like a sheet of black silk, draping over every street and towering building. The golden light from storefronts reflected off the pavement, slick with mist. In a small bar tucked away in an old neighborhood, where flickering neon lights cast a wavering glow, Cheryl Adams sat quietly at the last table. Beside her, an old phone lit up with a new message. Gregory failed. The next plan is in motion. Stay silent, Cheryl smirked, her fingers gliding quickly across the screen. Her eyes gleamed with a mix of resentment and despair. Ever since Preston Bennett had exposed her before the entire board of directors, Cheryl knew there was no path back, but she also understood a man like Preston, no matter how powerful, could still be taken down if you struck at his most vulnerable point, and that point was nothing other than his family. Meanwhile, at the Bennett family's Brentwood estate, Preston was holding a private emergency meeting in the vast living room. Ava sat upright in a leather chair, her laptop open before her. Beside her, Noah wore headphones, reviewing surveillance footage sent over by Preston's security team. Across from them stood Reed Dalton, newly appointed head of security, drawing a threat assessment map on the electronic board. "Mr. Bennett," Reed began, his voice low and firm, "we detected unusual intrusions into Aurora's main server 3 days ago. A significant amount of sensitive data was accessed and downloaded." Preston nodded, his expression unchanged. "Continue." "The hacker left no typical traces, but by analyzing the source code, we tracked the IP address to a network owned by Stratos Air." Ava froze, lifting her head. "Stratos Air, Aurora's direct competitor?" Reed nodded. "It appears the incident with Cheryl and Gregory was just a cover. A larger scheme is underway, involving direct intervention from Stratos." The room grew heavy. Noah took off his headphones and looked over at his sister. "You mean they want to destroy Aurora completely?" Reed sighed. "Not just Aurora. They want to obliterate the Bennett name itself. Erase you from the aviation industry." Ava bit her lip. She could feel the undercurrents swirling violently beneath the city's calm, glittering surface. Preston stood, walking toward the large window overlooking the sprawling lights of Los Angeles. He remained silent for a long moment. Then he turned back, his eyes sharp as blades. "We can't wait to be attacked again." He looked at Ava and Noah, his voice cutting through the tension. "We will strike back. Quietly, thoroughly, and leave no second chances." The plan was laid out that very night. Within the thick darkness of the closed room, Ava would use her tech skills to infiltrate Stratos Air's internal systems and uncover evidence of the plot to destroy Aurora. Noah, leveraging his knack for gathering information from social media and public camera networks, would trace the individuals involved. Reed and his team would fortify the family's security and prepare for any worst-case scenarios. Preston would continue to run Aurora publicly, maintaining appearance while behind the scenes, laying traps for their enemies. The night dragged on. In her private room, Ava sat by her laptop, the cool blue glow illuminating her serious face. Her fingers glided swiftly across the keyboard, unraveling complex security layers like untangling invisible knots. Lines of code flickered across the screen. A soft click sounded. Ava had successfully breached Stratos Air's internal network. She combed through the files with intense focus. Then a hidden folder appeared. Project Eclipse. Ava clicked it open. As the confidential documents loaded before her, her breath caught in her throat. A detailed plan to smear Aurora Airlines' reputation through a dirty media campaign. Secret emails detailing bribes to airport security personnel to plant contraband on Aurora passengers. Covert contracts with extremist groups to organize protests and incite violence targeting the Bennett family. Every line was like a dagger stabbing deeper into Ava's heart. This wasn't business competition. It was a war for survival. At the same time, in an abandoned warehouse in South Los Angeles, a secret meeting was underway. Jonathan Cross, CEO of Stratos Air, sat at the head of a long table. His sharp, cold features glinted under the dim lights. Beside him were unfamiliar faces not from the aviation industry, but well known in the city's underworld. Jonathan's voice cut through the murmur. Preston Bennett dodged the first blow. "But next time, I don't want his reputation. I want his complete downfall." A burly man wearing dark sunglasses nodded. "We're ready." "When do we strike?" Jonathan smirked, a smile that never reached his eyes. "Tomorrow night, when Aurora announces its quarterly financial report." He took a sip of strong liquor, his eyes dark and menacing. "We'll make sure he doesn't just lose his company, he loses everything." Back at the Bennett estate, Ava finished downloading all files related to Project Eclipse onto a secured external hard drive. She looked up at the ceiling, where soft yellow light pooled around her, and in that moment, she understood the game had changed, and her family had no way back now. Dawn spread over Los Angeles in a pale, cold, and somber light grayer than usual, as if the city itself could feel the unseen storm swelling beneath its false veneer of peace. At the Bennett estate, the air was taut as a drawn bow. Ava Bennett sat at the walnut dining table, the dim glow of her laptop screen blending into the mist of still steaming coffee. Beside her, Noah was meticulously scanning through lines of code, reviewing the files stolen from Stratos Air's system the night before. Every line of text flashing across their screens read like a verdict: dark plans, aimed at sinking Aurora Airlines and destroying the Bennett family's honor. Preston Bennett entered the room, the strands of silver in his hair catching the golden morning light, his gaze sharp as a blade. "What do we have?" he asked bluntly. Ava turned the laptop toward him, unable to hide the tension on her face. "Enough to corner Stratos Air and Jonathan Cross," she answered firmly. "But if we just release it recklessly, they'll spin it, make themselves the victims." Preston nodded. He understood. In the arena of media warfare, the truth alone was never enough. "Then," he said, looking squarely at Ava and Noah, his voice steely, "we need to deliver a counterattack precise, ruthless, and undeniable." The plan took shape that very morning, each step mapped like critical moves in a life-or-death chess match. Step 1. Organize an emergency press conference under the name of Aurora Airlines BIT. Instead of the usual boardroom, hosted at Los Angeles City Hall, maximizing media and governmental attention. Step 2. Release the evidence gradually from internal email communications, audio recordings of private exchanges, to the full Project Eclipse plan. Step 3. Before Stratos had time to react, strike the final blow. Reveal evidence of dirty money linking Jonathan Cross to the shadowy financial networks of Los Angeles. Ava, leveraging her tech skills, would orchestrate a seamless presentation of the evidence, futile and crystal clear. Noah, skilled at managing digital ecosystems, would coordinate the viral spread of the truth across social platforms, ensuring Stratos couldn't control the narrative. And Preston would be the speaker, the witness, the warrior, and the one delivering the final blow. That afternoon, Aurora Airlines officially released a statement: emergency press conference at Los Angeles City Hall, 10 a.m. tomorrow. Disclosure on unfair competition practices in the aviation industry. The announcement dropped like a bomb on the media. Within hours, major outlets from the Los Angeles Times, CNN, to the New York Post were ablaze with headlines: Aurora Airlines accuses rival of dirty play. High-stakes battle, Bennett versus Cross. What secrets are about to be uncovered? Jonathan Cross, attending a lavish party at his Bel Air mansion, received an urgent message from his aide. Frowning, he hurled his glass of red wine to the floor, where it shattered into 1,000 glittering shards. "They think they can fight me," he snarled, his eyes gleaming with wild cruelty. "Take them down before the press conference," he ordered coldly. "Use any means necessary." That night, the Bennett estate did not sleep. The security forces under Reed Dalton tightened their perimeter. Thermal cameras, motion sensors, covert guards, every defense tightened like a noose. In the second-floor war room, Ava, Noah, and Preston gathered around a large table. On the big screen, enlarged images of potential threats from Stratos appeared: media sabotage, cyber attacks, even the possibility of physical assaults. Ava glanced at Noah, who was managing a network of decoy social media accounts to protect and spread the truth if needed. Noah, just 50, and no longer looked like the mischievous boy he once was. His eyes now burned with the resolve of a young soldier entering a battle for survival. Preston laid a hand on both his children's shoulders. "I'm proud of you," he said, his voice low but filled with emotion. "Not for anyone else but for yourself, for standing tall amidst the storm." Ava smiled a small but unwavering smile. "We don't retreat," she said. We moved forward. Near midnight, a faint noise came from the back fence. Motion detecting cameras captured 3 dark figures slipping into the proper tickwick as shadows. They wore black, gloves tight, carrying signal jammers. Reed immediately triggered the alert. Preston, Ava, and Noah moved to their pre-assigned positions. No one panicked, no one faltered. They had been ready for this. As the intruders tried to cut the main power line, the backup system kicked in, flooding the entire estate in blinding light. Caught off guard, the 3 intruders panicked and bolted. But Reed's security team had already formed a tight net. Tasers cracked lead first to fell instantly, and the last was slammed onto the dewy grass. His hands wrenched behind his back. Preston stood on the front steps, looking down at the scene. "Bring them inside," he commanded. When the masks were pulled away, Ava and Noah stiffened. They recognized them same former security personnel who had once worked for Strato's airmen Preston himself had fired for dishonesty. Preston chuckled coldly. "Jonathan Cross," he muttered. "You really thought I wouldn't recognize a recycled trick?" As the night dissolved into the faint blush of a new dawn over Los Angeles, a small battle had been won at the Bennett estate, a victory for those who refused to bow. But the real Worth press conference tomorrow was just beginning, and this time, Preston, Ava, and Noah would not just be fighting for their honor, they would be fighting to rewrite the entire story. That morning, Los Angeles was cloaked in a heavy, leaden gray sky. Not a single ray of sunlight pierced through. The entire city seemed to be holding its breath in anticipation. In front of Los Angeles City Hall, the crowd grew thicker by the minute. Major news outlets had set up makeshift tents, their cameras and microphones crammed together. The giant electronic board overhead flashed a bold headline: Aurora Airlines Emergency Press Conference on Unlawful Competitive Practices. Behind the scenes, in a compact preparation room, Preston Bennett stood tall, his black suit impeccably pressed, his eyes deep and dark like the sea before a storm. Beside him, Ava and Noah adjusted their lapel microphones, their faces focused and intense. Ava gripped a folder tightly in her hands, containing the complete evidence gathered on Project Eclipse Strato's Air's malicious plan to destroy Aurora Airlines. She looked at her father, her gaze unwavering. "We're ready." Preston gave a slight smile, brief, but filled with profound trust. "Remember this, Ava, Noah, the truth can be buried, but it never disappears." Noah nodded, his palms sweaty, but his voice surprisingly steady. "We'll make them face it." The conference room doors swung open. Camera flashes exploded like lightning. Reporters jumped to their feet, lenses aimed squarely at the Bennett family. Preston stepped up to the podium, his 2 children right behind him. No security guards, no barriers, only raw honesty and absolute faith in the truth. He swept his gaze across the room, meeting curious, skeptical, even hostile eyes with steady calm. Then he began. "Ladies and gentlemen," his voice rang out, warm yet resolute. "I stand before you today not only as chairman of Aurora Airlines, but as a father who has witnessed his children become victims of a vile conspiracy." The room fell into a heavy silence. Even the camera shutters stilled, only the faint hum of recorders filled the air. Preston continued, "For months, Aurora Airlines has been attacked by the basest means: false accusations, sabotage, even attempts to frame our passengers." He paused, letting the weight of his words settle into the room. "And today," he lowered his voice, "we will expose the full truth." He signaled to Ava. Ava stepped forward, plugging a hard drive into the presentation system. The large screen behind the podium lit up evidence displayed one after another, indisputable and damning. First came the chain of emails between Cheryl Adams and Gregory Shaw, proof of their scheme to entrap Ava and Noah on the infamous flight. Next were recordings of phone calls between Cheryl and a senior aide from Strato's Air, discussing plans to plant fake white powder in the luggage of Aurora passengers. Then appeared copies of the Project Eclipse blueprint, a dirty media campaign, staged protests, fabricated rumors, even secret funding of extremist groups to plunge Aurora Airlines into chaos. Finally, Ava played a short video, a clandestine recording, capturing Jonathan Cross himself directing the operation. His face, his voice, and every one of his threats played loud and clear. The press room erupted. Reporters shoved forward, microphones jostling in a frenzy. Shouts filled the air. "Do you have direct evidence that Cross orchestrated this? When will Aurora sue Stratos Air? Is your family afraid of retaliation?" Preston raised his hand, signaling for silence. He looked directly into the live broadcast camera, his voice cutting through to millions of Americans watching. "Aurora Airlines will never bow to dirty players." He paused, his eyes flashing with steely resolve. "And I, Preston Bennett, on behalf of my entire family, vow this: we will bring every perpetrator behind this conspiracy into the light, through the law, through justice." The room fell into a stunned hush. Then, slowly at first, the sound of applause broke out, growing louder, faster. A group of reporters even rose to their feet, applauding. Ava and Noah exchanged a glance, their eyes shining. It wasn't pride in victory they felt, it was pride in having had the courage to stand, to fight. Across the city, in his Stratos Air office, Jonathan Cross hurled his whiskey glass against the wall as he watched the live broadcast. He roared, raging like a wounded beast. "They dare!" His phone buzzed incessantly. Messages flooded in. Stratos stock down 15%. Aurora Airlines lawsuit filed. Department of Justice demands investigation. Civil Aviation Authority suspends operations. Jonathan clutched his head and collapsed into his chair. The game he thought he had controlled had crumbled into ashes in a single morning. Back at City Hall, Preston stepped down from the podium, wrapping his arms around his children. The three of them walked outside, where, for the first time in days, Los Angeles basked in brilliant sunlight. The crowd gathered before City Hall erupted into applause. Some even chanted, "Bennett, Bennett." Ava lifted her chin, her dark brown hair lifting gently in the breeze. Noah smiled a broad, open smile, full of hope, as if the sky itself had been washed clean after the storm. Preston leaned in, whispering just loud enough for his children to hear, "This is only the first step. We have a long journey ahead, but today, you've done something most people would never have the courage to do." And together, the three of them stepped forward into the light. As the sun slowly set over Los Angeles, painting the sky with vibrant streaks of orange and red, the Bennett family thought the storm had passed. Little did they know, in the deepest shadows, a new danger was quietly rising. Just 3 days after the explosive press conference, the market had shifted as quickly as a gust of wind changing direction. Aurora Airlines, with the image of the Bennett family standing strong for the truth, made a stunning recovery in public trust. Their stock soared by 20%, and new contracts from Asia and Europe flooded in like a tidal wave. In contrast, Stratos Air plummeted uncontrollably. The news of Project Eclipse being exposed, coupled with the official investigation from the Department of Justice and the Civil Aviation Authority, began to fracture the empire Jonathan Cross had built over the past 15 years. Jonathan Cross was charged with conspiracy to sabotage, corruption, and money laundering. Within just 72 hours, he was arrested at his Bel Air mansion as head bowed under the relentless flashing lights of photographers. The headlines flooded every news outlet. Aviation mogul caught, Jonathan Cross arrested. Aurora Airlines' historic victory against a shadowy rival, a complete victory, seemingly unbreakable. But that night, at the Bennett estate, with the soft glow of lights filling the main hall, Reed Dalton, head of security, rushed into the living room, his face heavy with concern. Preston, sitting with Ava and Noah as they discussed their next moves, looked up as Reed entered. "What's going on, Reed?" Preston asked, his voice calm but firm. Reed placed a folder on the table, along with the commercial attacks from Stratos. "We've uncovered a massive underground financial network, and it's not tied to Cross." Ava squinted. "You mean someone else?" Reed nodded. each word heavy as stone. Yes, a bigger, even more dangerous force behind everything. Ava opened the folder, the neatly stapled pages inside causing both her and Noah to feel a chill down their spines. A chain of anonymous bank accounts transferring money to key figures within Stratos. Even before Jonathan Cross initiated Project Eclipse, these funds all led to one place: Dominion Holdings, a notorious international investment firm known for its ruthless corporate takeovers. Dominion Holdings wasn't just targeting Aurora Airlines. They were after the entire U.S. national airline system. Their plan, if successful, would control airspace, transportation, and the entire U.S. economic supply chain. Aurora Airlines was just the first step. Preston braced both hands on the table, lowering his head thoughtfully. The yellow light cast his face into sharp, brooding angles. "We're not just fighting Cross," he muttered, his voice rough. "We're fighting those who want to strangle America itself." Ava stared at her father, her eyes wide, her hands clenched. Noah remained silent, his lips pressed tight into a thin line. The atmosphere in the room thickened. They had won a battle, but the real war, brutal and enormous, had only just begun. That very night, Preston convened a secret meeting with only a handful of his closest allies: Reed Dalton, Ava, Noah, and two veteran legal advisors. On the large screen, the Dominion Holdings map appeared: international branches, disguised subsidiaries, key figures marked in red. Reed pointed to the most prominent name: Frederick Langston, CEO of Dominion Holdings. "Langston is not just an investor," Reed said, his voice steady. "He's the architect behind covert takeovers. He's manipulated banking systems in the Middle East, South America. Now, he's targeting U.S. aviation." Preston leaned back in his chair, his hands interlocked. "So," he said, his voice cold, "Langston won't stop just because Cross failed." "No," Ava interjected, her eyes burning with determination. "He'll act faster, more viciously. And this time, the target won't just be Aurora, across the ocean." In a glass-walled office on the top floor of a building in Switzerland, Frederick Langston took a sip of his whiskey. His cold eyes locked onto the live news broadcast showing Jonathan Cross being led away in handcuffs. He smiled thinly. "Just a pawn," he muttered, setting the glass down on the marble table. A man in a black suit approached him, bowing slightly. "New orders, sir." Langston gently adjusted his tie, his voice steady. "As though discussing the weather, erase all traces, and begin phase 2. The night in Los Angeles stretched on. The sky remained pitch black. At the Bennett estate, the lights still burned brightly. The Bennett family knew, from this moment on, they were no longer facing a small-time rival. They were up against a hidden force manipulating the world. And once again, they had to choose: stay silent to survive, or stand up and fight how it might cost them everything. Preston looked at Ava and Noah, children who had grown in the crucible, tempered by the harshest blows. He placed a hand on his son and daughter's shoulders, his gaze sharp like the lone stars in the dark night sky. "No matter what," he whispered, "we will not back down." And together, the three of them nodded, stepping into the new battle fight where survival, honor, and the future of millions hung in the balance. Los Angeles was immersed in a heavy, oppressive night, its streets lit up like veins of bright red across the city's body, still gasping for breath. But beneath the glittering exterior, a silent battle was about to explode. The Bennett family, Preston, Ava, and Noah, was ready. This was no longer a fight for personal honor. It was no longer just a fight for one airline. It was a battle between the truth and the dark ambitions, trying to manipulate the very future of the country. The very next morning, Preston organized an unexpected press conference at Aurora Airlines headquarters. But this time, he wasn't just presenting evidence against Stratos Air, was also publicly unveiling the power map Dominion Holdings had been constructing for years. On the large screen in the conference room, under the soft yellow light, Ava projected the classified files, dirty money circulating through dozens of shell companies, a string of covert supply chain buyouts, Internal emails from Dominion Holdings outlining their plan to manipulate the aviation industry, control the transportation market, and even influence national policies. Each piece of evidence was like a strike at the fabric of lies. Outside, below the building, international news outlets jostled for position, broadcasting the event live across the globe. The headlines flashed: Aurora Airlines uncovers Dominion Holdings global conspiracy. Shadowy conglomerate behind economic sabotage. Dominion Holdings stocks immediately plummeted. A wave of anger spread across social media, and politicians and federal agencies could no longer ignore the situation. Frederick Langston, from a once powerful figure in the shadows, was now a hunted man. However, Ava understood that Dominion Holdings wouldn't fall so easily, and she was right. Just hours after the press conference, Aurora's internal network was hit with a relentless cyber attack. Thousands of DOS attacks, sophisticated malware, and digital spear phishing attempts were launched to erase every piece of evidence. They had just revealed Noah, sitting before a computer screen in the security control room, coordinated countermeasures with unwavering focus. The 15-year-old wearing his gray hoodie and eyes burning with determination fought like a silent warrior. Across the room, Ava continuously set up firewalls, protecting their data while launching counterattacks that tricked the hackers into falling into digital traps she had set. Preston oversaw the legal team, sending lawsuits against Dominion Holdings to the Department of Justice and activating international treaties to freeze the assets of the conglomerate worldwide. The tech battle raged on for 18 hours. When the sun rose once again over Los Angeles, Dominion Holdings had been utterly defeated. The FBI, Department of Justice, and dozens of federal agencies worked in unison to sweep through. Key leaders of Dominion were arrested. Frederick Langston, after an epic chase across multiple countries, was finally captured at a secret villa in Montenegro. 3 months later, Aurora Airlines held a special ceremony in Los Angeles, not only to celebrate its resurgence, but also to honor the unyielding spirit of those who dared to confront the mightiest forces. In the Grand Hall, as Preston Bennett stepped onto the stage with Ava and Noah, the entire auditorium rose to its feet, clapping without end. Preston grasped the microphone, the stage lights casting his face in a glow radiant not just from victory, but from a deep belief in righteousness. He spoke, his voice resonant. "We are not perfect people. We do not have mighty armies or infinite power." He turned to look at Ava and Noah, his gaze softening. "We only have 3 things: faith in the truth, the courage to stand tall, and a family that never gives up." The auditorium erupted in applause, a thunderous standing ovation. Ava squeezed Noah's hand. The two exchanged a look that felt unlike anything they had ever experienced. Before a deep sense of pride, not for winning, but for standing up, for daring to fight. After this victory, Aurora Airlines didn't just recover, they became a national symbol of resilience in the face of injustice. The name Bennett was etched into the hearts of the public as a reminder that justice may not always come easily, but if we remain steadfast, it will prevail. Message of the story: the Bennett family's fight is proof that the truth can be buried, but it can never be destroyed. Justice may come late, but it will come if we do not yield. And a family, when united, can accomplish things that the world must respect. Though the most powerful people conspire to cover up the truth, though dark hands manipulate every tool they have, as long as there are hearts brave enough to stand up, the truth will still be rewritten. Be blood, tears, and an unshakable courage.